All right. I think we're ready to go. We can always fill people in. All right. So thank you all for joining. It's that time of year when we're supposed to be able to get our results together and submit them to HDX. It's not open yet, but we are going forward as if it is. And, the PIT count is still important for community planning, purposes. So whether or not the HUD deadline gets shifted or there's a couple changes on their end, that's on them. Let's just keep going like the homework is still due on April 30th. And to help with that, there's more nuances now with the point in time counts, and it's getting a little more complicated to compile everything from the different sources. We've got a lot more going on with vehicle residency lately. We have safe sleeping or sanctioned encampments, whatever you want to call them, interwoven, bringing in the data from HMIS, how you compile all of that. We have some feedback to share that what we've heard from some of the HUD vendor work group meetings and some of the admin calls. And then we've had some black holes as far as, waiting on what the feds want to do for some of these pieces. The good news is, before we get into it, from the data collection side of it, what's been done has been done. So as far as like the way that we set up the surveys and how we're asking, race and gender, that's all preserved in history, and we can map some of that forward. And if it's not the expectations what I hear from HUD that we're going to have to change any of those response values, it'll be done on the receiving end. So TBD on that piece, but as you probably noticed, anything related that has anything related to gender in particular, a lot of the guidance has been pulled from the HUD website. So we're navigating around it. So today we're going to focus on the different aspects as far as housekeeping goes. We're going to mute you for now, but you can come off mute. We have a small enough group. We're all in this together. You can learn from your peers. You come on camera. Just do whatever is comfortable for you. You can use the chat. We have others from Simtech. They'll be monitoring a chat. I can't. My ADHD doesn't let me monitor the chat and talk to you at the same time. So we'll just let that happen. So we have other people that will be chipping in on that piece. But yeah, feel free to raise your hand if you want to pause what I'm saying. And I think others from Simtech may be chiming in here and there as well. But yeah, let's just dig in. And awesome, to see the representation, by the way. And thank you all. Before I even dig in, thank you all for inviting us yet again to support your point in time counts. I think this year we had 63 continuums of care. It's an off year in the sense, I think after COVID, the even years became for those communities that don't do it every year, became the default for a lot of them. So we should be expecting over 70 and maybe more. And we do appreciate your support. And, for us, we're a mission-driven for-profit. And we do take the retained earnings that we get from the point-in-time count to invest in our research and development for other work. It's, really the data analytics and homeless data, some of the public-facing dashboards that are free for others to use, doing some other research that we support, and also the research and development for mobile tech for street outreach to show the way out. So thank you for your investment in us. It's going to allow us to expand our reach and our impact. And I will say that we really, if you are appreciative of what we do for the PIT count, check out what else we do, because there's ways that we can work together year round and support the work that you're doing. So this is the basic agenda of what we want to cover. And I'm not going to read it to you. We're just going to dig in. So data quality checks, there's still obviously time for some data cleaning, and we can get into this. You do have the ability to run the report inside the command center, and the options here will show you how to do it. But basically, you're going to go into the responses tab where it says HUD PIT report under reports, generate that. And then, there's basically you're going to choose the default options for the most part. You can run it with demographic extrapolation. We're going to go over the business rules that we use for extrapolation, but basically we use the HUD tool. It was an Excel tool, and it's the same logic applied there. You can see the formulas. You're basically extrapolating in to account for those missing responses. So when you go to submit to HDX, if you interviewed 100 people, but you only have responses for 90, you need to backfill for the missing 10 because they want it all to add up. And so that tool allows you to do that. For communities that signed on for geographic sampling and enumeration, which is it allows us to create a statistically reliable estimate without covering the entire continuum of care. You can choose here to run it with sampling applied. So that's the sampling piece. And then you also have the ability to choose here to run it by subregion if you use the region and county management and set those regions. So for some of you, you might not see all those options. So just to let you know, if you see a little bit different. We are adding a new flag for those of you that did use the safe parking or safe sleeping, also known as sanctioned encampments. So we created new project types this year for some of the communities that we work with. Not all of you have used that, but just to know it's available for the future. HUD still, when it comes time for generating the point-in-time report, they want all the results for safe parking and safe sleeping to be compiled in with the unsheltered column of the report. While we understand, where they're coming from, we see value in decoupling that data too, especially, again, talking about the shift in how we're responding to homelessness. There is a growth in safe sleeping and safe parking facilities. So we created new project types. We went above and beyond the HUD data standards and said, you know what, we need to treat these differently. And part of it, for anyone that uses geographic sampling enumeration, while they get counted in the unsheltered category, we don't enumerate results gathered from safe parking or safe sleeping to other tracks that weren't covered. We're treating it because it's a site-based operation. There's supportive services potentially there. So we're not going to count results that happen at those locations and apply a multiplier towards other areas because it's a magnet site. So just to understand, we can get into details there, but there's a handful of you that chose that option of geographic sampling enumeration. And if you did that and you had the safe parking, just know that we are treating it differently. All right. And there's going to be a little bit more explanation to some of the business rules as we dig in. But just know that you can use, once you generate a report, there's a whole data quality section on top of the report, and there's drill downs there. So if you have a high, prevalence rate of missing, race, missing gender, missing whatever it is, we don't allow for missing age. That's accounted for in the survey instrument itself within Counting Us. So, you ask for date of birth first. If they don't want to give that, we ask for age. If they want to give that, we ask for age range. And then the same thing on the observation tally. If we ask for, your the perceived age range. In the worst case, it's perceived to be an adult, perceived to be a minor or youth. So this is the section on the report, just so you can see that at the top, there's these drill downs. And if you wanted to dig in deeper on any of those, there's a whole data quality section underneath this that you can dig in deeper with. And it will show you a list of all of the surveys that are missing that characteristic. So on that, I will share, it's mentioned later on, it's an opportunity to do data matches with HMIS. For those of you that are what we call all-in clients, meaning that you sign on for Simtech's full suite of services, our software, our homeless response framework. If you want to use the warehouse, so the homewithdata.com, you can provide your data in the HUD CSV format to the warehouse and just send a support ticket to us saying, I'd like our data matched against HMIS, and we'll give you back a a data file that shows the matches. So it's up to you. We're not changing any data from the PIT, but you'll have that list of data saying this is the data that we have from the PIT count. Here's the data that we have from HMIS. And now I have, all this data that I can use that's captured historically to potentially fill in the gaps for things that weren't asked or answered by surveyors. So beyond that, so that's this piece right here that so I just talked about. So I kind of went ahead of the slide, my bad. And here's the data quality section on the PIT report itself. We'll put a link in the chat, but all of the guidance on how to do the other data cleanup. So it's handling duplicates. It's fixing, locations that end up in another part of the world. Most time that happens is, it's when someone doesn't have location services enabled and they manually enter an address, but they don't fill out the whole address. And that's a training piece. Ideally you have location services enabled. If you don't, for whatever reason, you almost have to treat it like you're sending mail to that place. Like you can't just be like the corner of this and this, because there's no way for us to take that corner of this and this, Main Street and Broad, whatever it might be, and then drop a pinpoint on a map that we can do geospatial data capture and reporting off of. So it's going to throw it. It just sometimes just throws a random dart on Earth, and it's like, wow, I've got someone in Sweden. So if you see that, open those records up, look at the street address, and then try to reflect on where the person was and what they were trying to say. And you can, typically you can fix the data that way. So there's other FAQs in here. So we just saw in the chat. Awesome. Any questions, let us know. But hope, we're going to focus on the business rule and the compilation, but know that these resources exist for you. So we do have guidance that we've written because we have to. It's a problem we're trying to solve, right? We're trying to solve for X. And when you're trying to solve for X, in this case, what's the overall, estimate of homelessness in our community? There's a lot of variables that within that have to be defined, not just sex. So for us, demographic extrapolation, I hit on that. We use the business logic that's found within the HUD tool. When we were using that HUD tool, this is something that's worth sharing. It came to our attention from a few communities we work with that even though there's a section for chronic homelessness in the HUD tool, nothing gets done with those figures. If you interviewed 200 people and 10% of them, 20 were chronic, right? But you had observations for another 200. Well, the overall chronic should probably be roughly the same percentages, but nothing changes. So on that. And the same thing happens for veterans and for the subpopulation questions at the end. So there is no extrapolation happening within the HUD tool for those data elements. So we wrote logic, and we can post the guidance on what we used. It's optional, and that can be applied to account for chronic, for veterans, and for those subpopulations. So, and it's for communities that have a high observation tally rate, it's more important, and it'll jump out at you more. And the same thing with vehicle residency, because we need to, so vehicle residency, if you're not engaging the person inside the vehicle or the people inside the vehicle, then we have to take the known universe of data from those we do survey and apply it to those that we weren't able to survey. You can't just add a number and not account for the percentages that happen in the surveyed universe for the people that weren't surveyed. So vehicle and makeshift shelters, we have logic for deriving count estimates based on the average number of people in each vehicle and structure type. So that's also on the guidance page. And that's following HUD logic. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper on the counting of RVs because we have conflicting HUD logic or guidance. So RVs is something it doesn't affect all of you, but especially the warmer climate communities, we're seeing a lot more vehicle residency with RVs. And so there's some gray area and some nuance to that, which is also important. Another reason why it's important for us to sandbox that data and look at it separately, and then also be able to bring it together. But if you don't capture the data in a way that granular aspect of it, you'll never be able to unpack it. So it's important that we separate it up front. And again, I think some of you have actually been messaging us about vehicle residency and some of the options we have now, and so we'll dig in deeper on that too. Geographic sampling enumeration. If you've used that, we've already connected, I'm sure. But if you have any more questions, reach out. But typically, if you sign up for that feature, we do hands-on, upfront, establish the count methodology, establish the track designations and sampling setup using known location information, and then we do the count. And then there may be some track swaps or some redesignations that need to happen. And then if we need to do that, we'll recalibrate, rerun the numbers, and then we'll have a methodology we'll send to you for a review. So if you've signed up for that, you're already familiar with the process. If not, that's the process. And then also for all of this, some of you are HMIS admins as well. And so you most likely use the Sage upload for APR results. Well, we use something similar in the void of not having that kind of mechanism for the point-in-time count. We created our own. And it's the point-in-time results file format is what we call it. Very, someone wants to come up with a better name for it, go for it. That's a matter of fact on that. And we also have the VMS, it stands for Vehicles and Makeshift Shelters results file format. And all this is it's a structured way for us to compile results and be able to rerun things without having to rerun the entire COC's worth of data. So if you've got one safe parking project, for example, we have, that can feed data into results file format. But if something changed, we don't have to rerun everything. We just rerun data for that safe parking project. And we also support sub-region reporting with this format. So, if you've got a larger COC and you use the region account team management function, and the mayor of one town wants to know the results, it's important to be able to give the mayor, their information for just their town. And the results file format accommodates that. So, and with the benefit of geospatial data capture and reporting. So demographic extrapolation, this is, basically you're just able to check this box after running, selecting to run the report. And then all it's doing is it's looking at the response rate and it's applying a multiplier, looking at the overall percentages of what was captured and applying it to what was originally captured. So if the multiplier, if the overall response rate is 95%, it's going to be like a 1.05 to get it to round up to 100%. And so you'll see the numbers, slightly increase. And these are decimals, right? Because that's the way math works. So we're leaving them as decimals with the understanding that when you go to submit the results into HDX, there are times when rounding will mess you up, right? So, and the example I like to use is if you take 3 and you had to divide it in 2, so you do it. So it's 1.5 and 1.5, but then you have to round. Now you've got 2 and 2, right? So you just turn 3 into 4 because you rounded. So when you go to submit, there may be times where there's an error flag that says this doesn't add up, and it's on us because they don't support decimals, or is on the person submitting it to recalibrate as needed. Any questions on that piece? Okay. Geographic sampling enumeration, just in case you're interested for next year, maybe you didn't have you don't have the volunteers you need. You have a large community, balance of state COC. I think we had 14 or 15 balance of state COCs. You don't need to cover everywhere. You go to the high probability areas, using known location data. It could be interactions with police. It could be any data you have to inform where to send people. We have a known location survey that as soon as you want to get rolling, you can start capturing known location data. If you want to use Show the Way for outreach, we can pull in that data as your known locations. We can use last year's point-in-time count data. Whatever data is to inform, this is where we have to send people. Right? In this case, you do those areas, with you can see these areas with a lot of a decent population density. These are marked as high probability, and it's a random sample of all of these other ones. And so the ones in blue were randomly selected low probability areas. And we're going to take the results from these and we're going to enumerate to the areas that we didn't go to. And there's a whole statistical, methodology that goes with all of this. And it's also a HUD endorsed approach to doing the count. But you'd also, for smaller communities, you need a certain sample size of census tracts or census area block groups in order to do it. So it's not something that every community can do. It's just saying that. And this is like an example. And so here's the specifications for the vehicle makeshift shelter, talking about business logic. What we use is that, there's the HIC and PIT notice comes out, and they basically give us guidance on, but then without specifications. So we have to take the guidance and write specs for the reports, programming specifications. So, we did this in the past with, Simtech authored the HUD APR programming specifications before we became more software vendors, back when we were in the HUD TA world. And we do the same thing with other reports we have to do. So that way, when people have questions of you, you can, or you have questions of us, we can go back to the specs and say, well, this is what we did. All right. So I'm going to spend a little more time on this because it is one of those nuanced areas. Not everyone used the vehicle makeshift shelter option. But for those of you that did, just know that what we're doing is when we do have the chance to interview someone. So a surveyor gets to interview people, and we ask them, where did you sleep last night? If they mention any of those vehicle or makeshift shelter types, it's a car, it's a van, it's an RV, it's a boat, we'll capture details from them of how many people slept with them in that spot. And then what we're doing is we're creating local averages. So we're not using national averages or some abstract number for all vehicle and makeshift shelter types. It's a locally derived average, unless your sample size is too small, and then we go to the national averages. So again, and we're using 3 or fewer. So if you have less than 3, we're going to go to national averages. And if there's interest in the future for us to adjust that threshold, we can do that too. So just know that that's the approach that we're taking. And so what we end up doing is when you go to generate that report, it applies, if it's an average of 2.2 people in a van, and it's 10 vans, then it's going to turn into 22. All right. And this also can be used in the geographic sampling and enumeration model. So in that case, it's a 2-step process in the business logic. So that's this piece. The RV part is the one I want to spend a little more time on, in the sense that counting RVs is difficult. All right. We have in this the HIC and PIT. So the PIT count methodology guide, which I think is still available on the HUD website. I don't believe that got taken down. Really, some of the key areas is saying that RVs are because they're ordinarily used as sleeping accommodation. HUD, in that guidance is encouraging us to look at the condition of the RV. Do the occupants have access to sewer, water, and electricity? Is it parked in an unusual place? Including non-RV designated lots, non-residential areas, or areas where RVs are not allowed to park. So this is what we used in our original programming logic. And we have, when someone says it's an RV, we ask for these qualifiers in the survey instrument itself. All right. Well, and look at the HIC and PIT notice. It's different. The logic is a little bit conflicting. It's saying that the RV must be counted as sheltered if the RV is located in a mobile home park or campus that advertises itself as providing temporary stays, and the RV is regularly connected to hookups. All right. And then it's unsheltered if it doesn't meet the logic and criteria one. So because of the conflicting guidance, we submitted a NAIQ, which gets redirected to William. Basically, it's William Snow's email. He tends to be the one to monitor it. And he responded, that there's some gray areas, and it's not exact science a little bit. I don't have the exact messaging in front of me, but to accommodate these permutations, when you go to run the report, you now have the option of what criteria you want to select locally. When there's a gray area, we give flexibility wherever we can. And so the defaults, so we added these new options for when you're running the report. And before we had options, we were excluding automatically RVs that appear to be in good working order and suitable for habitation, going back to the original guidance. That was our programming specifications that went along with the report. And again, we had specs that were authored and shared, and that's the logic we took. That was our interpretation of the guidance. Well, with the new HIC and PIT notice and the conflict that we noticed, we now created options, and by default, we're excluding RVs, and we're also only including RVs that are indicated not to be connected. And it's the double negative might throw you off, but if they're not connected to water, to hookups, all right? Some communities may say, you know what, that we believe everyone that's homeless needs to be counted. That is living in an RV, it needs to be counted. So we're going to uncheck those two boxes. And so may want to have a stricter piece. But it's important enough to share that vehicle residency is its own conversation, and it's a different type of homelessness than, in our perception, than people that are sleeping on a sidewalk. And so, and it's also worth noting that we preserve the data. If you work with us year over year, we preserve the data. So if you want to recast your lens on this, you can do that. I know what gets submitted to HUD is gospel to HUD, but from community planning purposes, it's important for you to be able to look at the data however you want. Dave, do you have your hand up?
Hi, yeah, thank you. For the RVs that appear to be in good working order, is it excluding only the ones that have that single description, or if there are 3 descriptions and one of them is good working order, are those excluded?
If they have the checkbox that says it's a good question. If they have the checkbox, checked that it's in good working order, it's gonna treat it as if it's good in good working order.
Okay, so it doesn't not just it. So okay, I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, good question. Yeah, and again, the raw data is important to have, and then there might be some forensic, especially with conflicting information. Like, because in this case, we have there's a checkbox, so you can say it's in good working order, and then it's like it's got flat tires or whatever the other description is. So in that case, it's like, well, which one is it? Because we have to account for the other. Does it have hookups, et cetera? Is why we went with checkbox. So that's a potential data cleanup piece right there. If you do see that conflicting, is it in good working order or is it not?
I've seen 2 completely contradictory things in the same description. So thank you.
No, and I think some of it, and maybe there's some other things we could do on the survey setup to be like, are you sure? Because you just said, it had a flat tire. So, but we're learning too. So like we have time to refine the survey instrument itself. If there's ways we want it might be like, what if we were this way? And so we appreciate ideas that y'all have to make it better. So that's this piece. Any other questions on that logic? And I know it doesn't affect all of you, but just know that as far as a growing population of homelessness, vehicle residency is the most staggering. We've been doing this work with the point time count 15, 20 years. As far as mobile tech, it's been around 14. But what we're seeing with vehicle residency is eye-opening. And it's big enough that we need to have separate conversations and work groups and solutions for this population. Some of which don't, a lot of it is anecdotally, it's that these communities are really expensive to live in, and we have a lot of working poor, and that's their choice of habitation. So does that make them homeless? That's the nuance. Okay. So you've got the data from all these sources. You've got your HMIS data for all your shelters. You maybe have some DV providers giving data elsewhere out. They're using a comparable database. Some of them, the quote comparable database isn't even comparable. It's just what they have. And they've been able to get away with it. You've got some faith-based providers. Some of them will use counting us for, we do support the ideally it's the same survey instrument you use for the unsheltered count. You can use for your shelter count, especially if you use custom questions, because then you're actually able to compare the responses to those custom questions across your project types. There's some potentially important information there that if you just went for an HMIS, your HMIS is for my shelter, counting us for unsheltered, you're not going to get that unless you have the ability to customize what the data capture is in HMIS. But knowing most vendors and their capacity to customize and tailor things to meet local needs, it's probably not going to happen. So anyway, we do have the ability to gather the data from different sources, and we support some larger communities, and they have these complex needs. And so as a result, we said, how are we going to do all this without having someone submit all these PDFs and printouts to us that we have to rekey and do all the math. And the other thing to layer in there is changes happen. People make mistakes, and it is such a time suck and a headache when one project has to redo all their numbers and you've already compiled everything. Because all of a sudden you have to do the whole formula from scratch again. And all of your enumeration and all of the work that you've done, it's like, oh my God, you're killing me. And that's happened to us. I'm not naming names, but I just know that's happened. We were trying to help, but it's like, and we get it, mistakes happen, right? So in order to support that, and the ability for people to make mistakes and to clean up the data, even though we give them a deadline and it's like, oh, someone was out and I did it afterwards, or whatever the thing might be. Or this wasn't really an emergency shelter, or whatever. There's all the other nuances too. We classified this wrong. So that because of that, we use the results file format. And what it does is it allows us to have a string of data per input. I'm just calling it an input for now. And in this case, what we're showing is you can use HMIS, any HMIS system. If you use the homelessdata.com data warehouse, then you can ingest the data into the warehouse and run the PIT report, and that will produce the results file format. If you don't use it, we have a results file generation tool, and it's an Excel tool. You're basically going to key in the results from your HMIS into the Excel tool, and it will create this flat file. All right. If you use Counting Us, when you go to run the PIT report, there's an export results button, and it will just produce it. All right. Show the way. If you're using that, the data goes into the warehouse for you, and you can run the PIT report from there. And then if you do you have DV, this picture is a little old. We used to have an Excel-based tool for domestic violence providers, but with all the changes in the HUD standards for the permutations, it just became too unwieldy to keep supporting. If we need to, in the time that we had to as well. So now if the race and gender options, get trimmed down again for future counts, maybe we could support it again. But just know that worst case, you use the results file generation tool and just keep the results in there, and it'll take care of that. But with all these CSV files that have the results, there's a compile results feature inside the command center. So all you're going to do is you're going to drop them all into a folder on your desktop, on your computer, and then you're going to browse for that. You're going to browse for that folder. You have to zip the results, and then you upload it, and it's going to populate a tool, and it's going to have all some of the options to whether or not you want to include vehicle makeshift shelter estimates. If you want to do the extrapolation for race and gender demographics. Do you want to extrapolate for chronic homelessness? Do you want to extrapolate for veterans? Do you want to extrapolate for subpopulations? Baked into the tool. So it gives you local control of what to do next. And this is the results file generation tool to create that flat file format. And again, we'll put the links to these tools on our website, for the communities that want to use this. And especially for anyone that signed on for dashboards, the PIT evaluation dashboards or the reports, we need this data in one place. So if you haven't, when you're ready to give us your shelter data or your HIC data, because we use that too for capacity utilization. And there's a tab and then results file generation tool as well for your housing inventory chart data. We just ask you to download the workbook, put your information in, and send it to us so we can use that for the dashboards and for the reports, or both for some of you to sign up for both. So that's basically submitting the data to us. So this is examples of the output. So you've got PIT evaluation dashboards. Jackie went through this arduous task of normalizing all of the historical data made available by HUD from like 2004 to current into our results file format. It's like that alone is a task that should be on HUD TA. HUD TA is being reduced, but should have been something that they did a long time ago. But the beauty of that is now we have, instead of like a tab for every year, the way that the HUD provides it when you download the historical data, like, what are you going to do with that? It's not in a structured format to consume and present in Tableau or other tools. Now we have for a row of data for every community for every year. And then when we want to add this year's data, it's just adding another row. And then we have to just refresh the dashboards. So the idea is we get it all in the same structured format to support reporting analytics. And then the tools and can just ingest information and display it out. And then we use the same logic and that's been vetted for the dashboards that we use to feed key components of the formal PIT reports. And if you're using the formal PIT reports, we provide a structured template for output, and it's going to have a design, a look and feel that works with your branding. But there's certain sections that we're just providing the results, and we're not getting into the narrative. What's happening locally. You can write your executive summary. Who the key contributors are. That's not us. And if you want to dig deeper on one area and elaborate, we give you the freedom to do that. It's your output. We're just guides to give you some high level objective numbers for you to comment upon. So the idea is that we get you closer to the finish line like a Sherpa, but you're still the one that gets to the mountaintop and you claim victory. So we're part of it, and we work together. But our job is to make sure the numbers are tight and the process is tight. So just for you all to be like, we're not writing individual, stories about every community. And the part of the beauty of that structure is by having that template and that structured environment, we now are closer to supporting peer-to-peer benchmarking. So we can look at different reports in different communities and see, what's happening in the commonalities and the disparities between them. So there's a benefit to having that model. Plus, it's sustainable. Like there's no way that we can do 70 different homework exercises and give you all the level of support you need unless we have that standardization. This is an example of the output. There's different tabs, but it gives you a way to, and it's important to understand the audiences of for the PIT. So you're going to have the people that want to read. You're going to want to have some people that want to geek out and look at just the data, and that's how their brains work. You're going to have people that want to do both and like interplay, and then you also have to get the data to HUD, right? So you get different audiences for the same information, and then potentially you have local, sub-regional city mayors talking about either city council districts. You have that nuance potentially as well. So we're trying to accommodate everyone in the same exercise, and the best way to do it is to give options. So at least for our perspective. So this is an example of the output. One of the things I want to share with everyone is Simtech is working towards really supporting an ecosystem where we have people that want to really focus on the data analytics and drill down on certain pieces to be able to work with each other and support a community of this idea of research, but based on vetted logic and standardized business rules. And ideally, both for the point in time count information, what goes into the warehouse from HMIS and our outreach app show the way, and the geospatial data capture that we have for all of our tools, we are the data pipeline, if you will, and we lean on local knowledge and expertise and give you the prep data that you can play with. And I say play in knowing that not discounting your academic credentials and skills. It means I want you to be able to roll up your sleeves and have fun with the data and learn about what's going on in your communities. But do it together. So stay tuned on that part, but just know that we may start having subcommittees focused on research and analytics, both on the PIT, but also on other data that's available, potentially with prevention and diversion, the longitudinal picture of while people are homeless and supporting those active binding lists, ideally in real time, as well as on the discharge, the exit strategies. So the whole continuum, with the support of geospatial data capture, which also leans into what we can use for the census and other geospatial data sets that you can't do if you don't capture data the right way. So with the shelter data, for our all-in clients, you can just, if you want, you can just upload the data to homelessdata.com and run reports there. And as far as getting the HIC and PIT, the information to us, we can pull it from there. We also have the tab within the results file generation tool to get us the HIC information. They both have their benefits. Sometimes you can do both. The benefit of uploading the data is to the warehouse is we have capacity utilization score and data quality scorecards that show utilization over time. And if the PIT counts are way above or below what you say for your housing inventory, it's going to look off. And so it's a good tool as a data quality check. As far as getting the numbers back to HUD, David, question.
Yeah, real quick. Thank you for this. This is very helpful. So I guess our question is this at all? Does your company at all offer mobile surveys on an app where we're collecting data and it's automatically, um, you know, creating those sheets?
Yeah, so we have two apps. One app is the Counting Us app that most communities use for the point in time count, and the other is the Show the Way outreach app, which is also being used by a few shelters now. And the census app, so point in time is Counting Us, and the longitudinal data capture for mostly by outreach. And first responders too, we have a role for them, is the Show the Way app. But both are geospatial data capture. So we tag the location of every interaction. And then by having geospatial data capture, we have geospatial reporting that they can, using polygon shape detection to be able to support sub-regional or regional reporting of all the interactions that happen within a particular part of the community.
Thank you.
Sure. Good question. And we'll spend a little more time on that. And all the information in where we're going is to be able to support real-time oversight and be able to have a by name list that's active and current. And so this exercise with the point in time count, and keep in mind, this has been going on for, since, I think my first count was 2003, 2004. So it's been going on for a while. But part of the reason why we do these PIT counts is because we have this need for the data capture that doesn't happen year round in many communities. So if we can negate that need by making sure that we have, strong, effective coverage, then we can really diminish the need for the PIT count altogether. And on any day of the year, be able to do a PIT count. So, not just January 27th or whatever, but June 5th. How many homeless people do we have today? Where did they come from? Where are they going? The idea of a by name list, kind of came out of work with Community Solutions originally, but we built the first by name list in the country, the first HMIS data warehouse in the country back in 2005. And you created a prioritized by name list off of that using transactional data. So it's, when I say transactional data, it was bed nights within the shelters and then hospital visits and ER visits. So we can use transactional data to inform prioritization models. And then when you do that, you can allocate resources to people that are your $1 million Murrays in your community, the people that are expensive, and have a lot of interactions. And that frees up a lot of resources for the people below them. And by moving towards that model of looking at the transactions, it diminishes the need for vulnerability assessments, and which, have been proven to have racial and gender bias. So it simplifies things by having better data capture year round. And you get to know what their barriers are and their challenges are. And then, in doing that, you can figure out what your unmet needs are too, and reallocate resources where they need to go. But a little bit of tangent, but it's worth calling attention to. So if you go to HUDHDX right now, you're going to get this screen. Hopefully that's going to be going away soon. But let's just prepare, pretend the teacher's out of office right now, but you still have to hand your homework in. Traditionally, it's April 30th at the end of the month. Maybe if it falls on a weekend, they'll change the date a little bit, but it's typically the end of April. So let's plan on it being then. That way, if they decide to extend it, sure. But I don't want anyone to get trapped and expect them to extend it and then find out that they don't. So let's use that as our deadline. Let's work together to get everything tightened up. But in the meantime, you can think about what a HDX is looking for ahead of time. Do your counts for the different sections total up? Like if I have 100 people and look at my responses for race, does it total up to 100, example, age, etc. So with the PIT count now done, the data capture piece of it, we do really, and we'll put these same, they're all the surveys, these feedback surveys are also on our website, but we'll put them on the in the chat too. But you can also, scan the QR, scan with the QR code. But we really do appreciate any feedback that y'all have. Uh, you know, we believe we're leading the space, but that's not necessarily enough. We want to stay, up front, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of y'all. I hope you saw both on the performance of the tools, the refinements in the survey instruments, our help desk support, the guidance, these webinars that we're doing what we can, and we're hearing you and your feedback, but there's always room for growth. So if you have ideas, suggestions, constructive feedback, please let us know. And if you do like our tech and you're happy with it, we would appreciate any referrals. It's how we grow, it's how we have more impact, and it's how we can spread out our costs to serve you better and grow our own internal teams and invest in the things that we think are needed well before the market comes around and says, yeah, we need it, but it's too late. So the things like safe parking and safe sleeping and some of these preventative models, some of the research opportunities that we support behind the scenes, your support's really appreciated. And then this is the screen that it kind of reflects on the idea of being able to capture the data year round, using Show the Way. If you want to use a different outreach app that maybe you could do geospatial data capture and capture those detailed interactions. We can work with other data sets. We're not trying to be exclusive. But the point is like, if you get to know your population of the people that you're trying to help on a daily basis, we can pull that information into the warehouse, so almostdata.com, and we can use that to say, this is the point in time count. And this year was the first time that we were able to have a community, in this case, it was New Bedford, Massachusetts, that didn't use Counting Us. They didn't do the traditional point in time count. They use Show the Way with targeted outreach. And part of the benefit of that, because they do ongoing data capture, is the key thing is if someone's already been interviewed and asked those tough questions, if you get down to the bottom end of the interview, there's all this, demographics are pretty easy. People might be like a little awkward when you ask how old you are, especially, but it's more about like the disabling conditions, domestic violence experience, how long have you been homeless? Some of those questions that take a little bit of training and knowing how to engage people and building that rapport and that trust over time. Those questions, if they've been asked by someone that has built that relationship, by years of working with someone, let's use that and not put it on some, concerned citizen that just showed up for a day and then is going to go back to their other job tomorrow. So by doing that, we were able to trim down the questions for anyone we did get a match for by 83%. You basically just need to know who it is. And if you get a hit with, based on the names and the key demographics, we don't have to ask the other questions. Was there a question, Joseph? Sorry, hand up.
No, sorry, I was clapping about the 83%.
Oh, okay. And this is where I need my readers. I see like a little emoji in the corner. So yeah. But that's all we had to share, really for today. So if people have any specific questions about us, so again, you'll see the compile results feature. I can, in the app, that's the big thing that's new for you that do have different sources you need to pull together. If you're doing everything in HMIS, I mean, it could just be like you just use HDX, and it's like everything goes in the sheltered column for HDX for everything coming from HMIS, and unsheltered comes from counting as. But if you do need that tool, just know that that's available. If you have questions about us, any of this, you can use PIT at simtechsolutions.com. For HUD, they have their own email address, but I think I'm not sure what it is. I forget what it is. I have to my email inbox, but if you need it, let me know. I'm at matt@simtechsolutions.com. My phone number's in my email signature. Worst case, you leave a voicemail. But just know you've got myself and the whole team here to get you through the final steps. So any other questions while we're together? Can we send the recording? Yes, we can. Absolutely. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone for joining. And you know how to reach us if you have questions afterwards. We will thank you, Jackie. We're going to post the recording on the webinar slide, but we can also follow it up with an email to let you know it's there. But unless there's other questions, we appreciate all of you. And if you want to sign up for 2026 PIT count, we're starting to do some of the contracts for that now. Feel free to reach out. We can get that in place. But otherwise, take care and be well. Bye, everyone.